kept Michigan and why am I spacing out on them?
UConn,
Holy UConn. Good grief.
because it was barely a football team.
Yeah, I mean it was 59-0. It was nice to hear good things from Jim Moore Jr. after the game.
Yep.
Said, Michigan it looks like a college football playoff team.
Yep.
So that's high praise from a guy that's actually been a really solid coach most of his career. He's just kind of in a bad program trying to restore it.
Yep. He was pretty good at UCLA. He had some good. I mean,
even with it, he was with the Atlanta Falcons. I think he was the coach there for a little bit.
Yep. He was well regarded in the NFL circles too as a good coach. I mean, obviously his dad
was a good playoffs.
Coach. He's
you kidding me?
Playoffs? Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's hard to take stuff from games like this. We've talked about the last 3 weeks. So, but there are things. There's always positives, right? They played 100+ guys again. They played 9 or 8 quarterbacks. Pretty sure 8 of them attempted a pass, which is insane. Not sure I've ever seen a game where that's ever happened. I can't think of that ever happening. Which is cool. I mean, that's good, especially for those guys. I mean, they're not going to be able to play. Most of those guys are not going to play again. Maybe ever.
And probably half of those guys may not stay in the Michigan roster their entire career.
I mean, exactly. So
Jaden Denegal is probably transferring at some point, right?
It's great. It's great for those guys to get some action, to play, to get experience, because they work really hard throughout the whole week to give either scout team or just in practice in general.
And they do the same conditioning. They have to go through the same
workouts. They gotta go
and
through
drills.
Everything exactly the same. And it's a dedication to play a sport in college, let alone, I mean, I played Division III baseball, and that was a dedication. These guys play Division I football at at
Power 5 school, yeah,
right, at considered a top 10 program, right? It's crazy dedication on top of school, right? And those guys doing that, it is nice to see them be able to pay it off and play. So that's cool. And that's good for a program too. That's good for your program health, because you know what? You never know. Injuries could come around and you could be down to the 4th string guy at some point at a certain position. There's teams around the country right now that are at that point. And you got to be able to rely on those guys. And if you see them in game action, then you can, or at least what they can do. And then there's other things, for the most part, they're healthy. They have some guys that are banged up. Donovan Edwards didn't play, but Trevor Keegan was in and out of the lineup.
I saw Greg Crippen didn't play again.
Greg Crippen didn't play again. He might end up medical redshirting, from what it sounds like, because he's struggling. Might not be able to get back. Carson Barnhart didn't play, which is fine. So
Neither did Matthew Hibner.
Another thing that this games like this afford you is time to get guys healthy, right? If you do have guys that are nicked up, you don't need to.
Jalen Perry and Nakai Hill-Green were also not.
Yeah, Nakai Hill-Green should be back this week. It sounds like Donovan Edwards will probably play too. So those games afford you that. I mean, it's frustrating. I mean, Cade McNamara getting hurt, it sounds like it's relatively significant at the very least. Isn't great for quarterback depth, because you worry. I mean, we love how JJ's played, and
do you think that's also part of why? I mean, Harbaugh was probably going to plan on playing 5 quarterbacks anyway, but do you think he just threw all of them out there just to be like, what do we got here?
I mean, maybe. I mean, I don't think he's going to sit there. I mean, I think he has a pretty general.
I don't think he's going to be like Jaden Denegal is my next guy, right?
But, yeah, I mean, I think he's got a pretty general idea of what he wants to, of who's next. I mean, there's guys that have played in every game.
Probably
right?
Bowman or Warren, right?
Alan Bowman has played. He started 17 games
at a Power 5 school. Yeah,
at Texas Tech, right? And then Davis Warren has shown flashes of legit ability, probably higher ability than even Alan Bowman, right? So you've got 2 guys that you probably feel decent about, but it does suck because I mean your starting quarterback last year, you had to feel pretty good.
Win a Big Ten championship, right?
Right. You had to feel pretty good about your Big Ten or about your backup quarterback situation if JJ went down or struggled. I doubt he's really going to struggle or to a point where feel like you need to pull him, but you felt like you had a safety blanket with Cade McNamara. Mm-hmm. Now you worry if JJ,
and even with his injury risk, because he's a mobile quarterback, he's going to take some of those hits.
Yeah, exactly. So and you want that to be a part of his game, right? You need that to be a part of his game, part of JJ's game. So you just got to be careful. Getting to the actual play on the field, we just talked about some of that. I mean, they did whatever they wanted. UConn on offense is just anemic, right? They're pretty
Especially
poor.
without Trey Roberson. Holy cow.
Yeah, they just don't have.
Zion Turner and Millen just
Yeah,
yuck.
I think they've got a few guys. Their back's pretty good. Nathan Carter's a pretty good back. They got a couple of decent linemen, but they just aren't at that
Even
level.
Rosa had a pretty decent game, had a couple few runs, but
Yeah, they just don't have the ability. They only had 105 yards, so that's a pretty much they only crossed midfield once. So that's a good thing. I mean, it's hard to shut out a team too.
yeah,
When you
our
have
ones are still some that defense right now. The ones are as good as it gets. You can't ask for anything more right now. They swarm to the football. They're there right away.
Yep.
They just attack.
Yep. I mean, what you worry about is okay. They got pulled early in all 3 games, right, to avoid injury, right? So and it
How's the
was good
conditioning?
because he did let him play into the third quarter. So he's trying to extend him out a little bit because it's a conditioning standpoint now at this point. So and then on offense, I mean, it was efficient. There were a couple, miscues here and there, but you're never gonna have a perfect game.
Yeah, I 2 years ago on the podcast, I ragged on Ronnie Bell. He's due for a good drop every single game, but Ronnie Bell still had a good game. He still had a good game, so I'm not going to drag on him too much.
He didn't have a drop this game.
I think he did.
What drop? When was the drop? He had a
Oh
drop.
man, do I have to? I can't pull up the film right now, but
I don't remember him having a drop at all.
I'll rewatch it tonight, and I'll let you know what part of it was.
All right. It's recorded on my TV, so I can find it. I don't think he had a drop.
Yeah, it's still on mine too, so I can easily pull it up.
Yeah, I don't remember a drop this game.
Hopefully I'm not mixing it up with Hawaii. I knew he had a bad drop. It was like, what are you doing, buddy? That you should have caught
They had
that.
a drop against Hawaii, but even that one was a tough catch too over the middle. That was not easy. But I'm not worried about Ronnie Bell dropping the ball.
And I mean, right now those three. I mean, Cornelius Johnson's as reliable as they come. Roman Wilson's just been huge in the open field.
Mm-hmm.
So I like everything they got right now, and I wish they would get Andrew Anthony involved more. He played 26 snaps, and I think he got a catch.
No, he didn't have any catches. He has 1 catch this season.
Okay, which is like he's playing snaps. He's got a lot of snaps.
Yeah, I mean, part of it's he's got to get open. Part of it is other guys have been open. I mean, you don't want to force feed a guy, right? So I was watching. Devin Gardner was actually talking about the game a little bit today. I was watching it, and he was talking about how it's got to come naturally, right? You can't force feed a guy because then you're taking something away. It's then you're gonna if you go into it and say, hey, we got to get him involved on this play, especially for a young quarterback like that, who's learning how to play the game at this level, you can't be doing that because it's suddenly going to take away from what the actual play is, right? So you can't be just force feeding your guy just to try to get him going. Now, he did say eventually, yes, they need to design some things to probably get him to break open, get him to break out, maybe some easy throws to him, stuff like that. But at the same time, he's got to get open. And
I was just looking. He's got 70 snaps this year, so 1 catch isn't great.
No, but
so
he's
getting
wide
snaps.
receiver blocker.
Yeah, he's great. He's a great blocker. And the other thing I read was that people were like, "You better get him involved, or he's going to transfer." I'm like, he'd be a moron to transfer. You probably have 3 quarterbacks and 3 wide receivers this year that could go to the draft.
Exactly.
I mean, 3 guys above you could go to the draft. You can be wide receiver 1 next year.
Exactly. So he'll get involved. I'm not too worried about it. JJ, I mean, especially with the ball, they're going to throw the ball. They obviously already have thrown the ball more than they did last year. They're more balanced. I am interested to see, because you're going to get into a game, what I want to see, and I would love to see it this week, but I'm not sure it'll happen. It depends. This is kind of, we can segue into Maryland a little bit here, but I would love for them to just ride Blake Corum for 25 carries though in one of these games, right? And I know he hasn't gotten that many touches, but he has 7 touchdowns on 35 carries, which is.
It reminds me of Khalid ridiculous. 1 year as a fullback.
Right. I mean, obviously he had 5
9 touchdowns on 12 carries.
Right. I mean, it's not that crazy, but they're going to have a game where, hey, it doesn't need to be in the air, right? Why would we put the ball up for grabs? Our defense is playing great. Why don't we just grind it out, right, and get down the field like they did most of the games last year? And I like the fact that they're able to throw the ball more, and you do have all these weapons, right? But I like sitting there, and I feel like it helps your identity as a team and your toughness as a football team in general, and it helps your offensive line gain confidence and traction in a game if you're able to just say, hey, we're going to give Blake 25 carries, maybe 30 carries, right? And he's just going to go off, right? And maybe JJ's only going to throw the ball 20, 25 times, right? But we're not going to turn it over, and we're going to win, 30-10. Maybe we're not going to win 56-17, right? But we're going to win 30-10, and we're going to dominate the game. And I that's kind of what I hope for this week. Maryland's got some good players on offense. Like
I think they have one of the best names team. I'm a sucker for creative names, and they've got a lot of guys that have just fun names. And I was looking at it you got Emilio Moran and Dante Demas, and obviously Talia Tagovailoa is cool. CJ Dupre, Delmar Glaze.
They have arguably the second or third
Maximus McCree.
Yeah, I'm not sure he plays.
He's the backup right tackle to Delmar Glaze. But then you have Bo Braid. Who's another one? I really saw Fanaje Gote.
Yeah,
Ryad Wilmot. Greg China Rose. Mosiah Nasili Kite. Ruben Hippolyte.
Yeah, Ruben Hippolyte's a good player. He's a good linebacker.
And then Tommy King Basode. And then they have Tarheeb Still. So and just a few names. Tarheeb Still is hurt. He's on injured reserve now, but other than that, I look at some of their best players here as Dante Demas to me is probably their best player.
Rakim Jarrett's better. I think Rakim Jarrett's the best.
But that's the other thing I was going to get to, because we talk about the Ohio State's receiving group: Jackson Jigma-Smith, Marvin Harrison Jr. They've got even Emeka Agbula, right? They've got three really crazy good wide receivers.
Maryland is right up there with them. I would say.
If I have to say off the top of my head, have a top three in the Big Ten receiving duo with Demas and Rakim Jarrett.
Yep.
And I think that's part of obviously Talia's success, but those three guys right there, Talia, Rakim.
And they brought in Copeland, who was Florida's. Copeland transferred in, and he was Florida's number one receiver last year. He led Florida in receiving last year, and he's a dude. So they got three dudes at receiver.
I think they're also very good in the interior line. You got Mosiah Nasili Kide and Ami Fanal, who that's a really good interior. Ja'Cory Bennett's a good safety. You talked about obviously their linebacker that I mentioned with Ruben Hippolyte. He's pretty solid, and then Chad Ryland's probably a top 3 or 4 kicker in the Big Ten.
Yep.
And then I look at their tackle Jalen Duncan, who is a pro prospect, 2-time All Big Ten, into his 4th season as a starting left tackle for Maryland. So to me, those are
they're going to be a test. This is obviously going to be the best team that Michigan's played. They played 3.
Yeah, I mean Maryland's 3-0, and they've also played. Technically, you look at the schedule, and you probably say Buffalo is a better team right now.
Buffalo's pretty bad. Buffalo would be similar to what Michigan's played. I would say they would get thrown in there. Buffalo lost to Incarnate Word or something after that, or no, Holy Cross. Buffalo lost to Holy Cross.
But they played Southern Methodist in Charlotte as well.
Yep. And SMU's a good team. SMU's 2-0 now. It was a close game, right? It was 34-27 last week, but they're pretty good. I don't know. This is obviously going to be a test. Michigan's, I think, a 17-point favorite or 16 and a half.
They are. It was at 17 last I saw. Yeah.
Yep. I'm actually surprised it's not a little bit higher, but I think everybody's kind of waiting and seeing, okay, how good is Michigan?
Everyone keeps dragging the schedule.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter. Just go out there, and if you go out there and win games, it doesn't matter. We don't care. No one cares if you win all the games. Right?
Sometimes this just happens. We made this schedule 3 years in advance.
Well, and they were talking about that today on Big Ten Network.
And we were supposed to play UCLA. Remember UCLA?
Yeah, they were, but Colorado State even 4 or 5 years ago was a top 35 program, right? They were rolling, right? Yep. And then they, some guys they were coaching.
Hawaii
would have been considered a top 50, 60 program.
Yeah, they were a bowl team for 4 straight years 3 years ago.
Yep. They went through a bunch of crap. And then UConn, that was probably I'm pretty sure what UCLA got replaced with, right? And the only reason it was easy to do it is because Ward Manuel came from UConn, so I'm sure he still has relationships over there, so they just threw them in there, right? Mm-hmm. Fair enough, right? So cool. You usually have one pushover anyway, right? And then you have one pretty decent team, and then maybe you do have a Power 5 team. That's usually how most of these schedules go. The Power 5 team got removed because UCLA got canceled. The home and home got canceled. Mm-hmm. I mean, Michigan's going to Texas and Oklahoma in the coming years. So I don't know. It's not next year. Next year's schedule is also not great. It's a little better than this one. But in the coming years, they got Texas and Oklahoma on the schedule.
And I mean, they played Florida and Colorado and Utah and Jim Harbaugh's tenure before as well.
Exactly. Notre Dame. They typically,
Notre Dame.
back in the day, they would have played Notre Dame. I mean, everything it hasn't been that bad. Yes, I will say this. This is probably the worst.
Just luck of the draw, though, sometimes.
Schedule. But, I mean, they talk about Minnesota's schedule has been terrible this year, too. But they have Colorado on the schedule. Colorado is quite possibly one of the worst FBS teams in football this year. But 5 years ago, they were a top 25 team, right? So it's just kind of sometimes, especially when you're scheduling some of these fringe FBS teams or some of the middle tier Pac-12 teams, or it's hard to know. Teams when they lose their coach, suddenly they can go down the drain pretty quickly. So I don't really blame anybody for the schedule. I mean, people can make fun of it, and that's fine. I mean, yeah, they didn't play anybody so far, but if you're Michigan, this is the year starts now, right? The year starts this week. I think they're on paper a better team than Maryland, but Maryland poses problems. So what I want, I mean, if you're a fan, you got to sit there and go, I would expect it to be at least a pretty good game for the first half, maybe into the beginning of the third quarter. I would expect it to be. Now you feel really good if I'm not expecting a complete blowout like the previous 3 games, but you feel really good if it's a complete, if you're just dominating this football game. You're going to feel really good about this Michigan team if they go out there and they just swarm, right? And it wouldn't surprise me. I think the talent is there. It's just, hey, let's put it all together, and the starters are going to probably be in there longer now too. Let's put it all together, and I think they can dominate this game. But I would say I'm thinking maybe 42-17.
That's almost exactly what I said. I said 42. I said 42-20.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think Maryland's going to put some points on the board. They even did last year. I think Michigan won 55-17 or something like that, or 50 something.
Their wide receivers are that much better. Their quarterback is that much better.
Yeah.
Jalen Dunk
Pelly is going to get an NFL chance. I mean, he's got arm talent. He's a little loose with the ball at times, but I mean, really, they look at. I mean, I think he had 11 interceptions last year, which isn't really all that bad. But 5 of them came in one game. So really, he had 6 in the other 11 games, 12 games that they played. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
5 against Iowa, and he just looked terrible. Two of them were tipped.
He got in his head after those first.
Right, and he just struggled, and that happens, right? So I think he's really talented. I'm not really all that scared of their running game, but they're going to throw the ball. And this will be a test for the defensive end, see if they can get some pressure on them. And it'll be a test for the DBs. I mean, they haven't been tested yet. I mean, we've seen them. I mean, luckily they've been tested because they're upperclassmen, at least at corner, right? DJ Turner went through the fires last year. Jamon Green's been around. He's went through the fire last year. The safeties, they don't have a Dax Hill this year, but RJ Moten was around last year. Rod Moore played in that game last year against the same team. Makari Page has been around. So they're pretty veteran back there. So that's what kind of makes me feel pretty good about it. I feel like they'll be fine. But, are they going to be all right up front? The defensive ends are the young guys or the guys that haven't played. Are they going to be able to handle that stuff?
Yeah, and I was wondering about Trevor Keegan. I don't know if you had any more information on that. He played 12 snaps in that game, and then obviously Giovanni.
Yeah, he got banged up. I think he'll be fine. They pulled him out. El Hadi, I think, came in after him. And
Carson Barnhart, you said, is expected to play at some point.
I think he's supposed to be back, and it sounds like Nikai Hill-Green should be back. I think they held out a lot of these, and Donovan Edwards could have played last week, but there's no.
Yeah, I like that. Carson Barnhart's the guy that sometimes I even kind of think about plugging him in over Trente Jones sometimes. So. Yeah.
Well, yeah, Trente's struggling because Trente's a great run blocker. I mean, he's incredible in the run, but he's struggled a little bit in the past. They haven't. I mean, it seems like it's always when Cade comes in, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, it's I think Trente secretly has a favorite.
Well, I mean, there's been talks about it. I mean, as a pass rusher, you can't rush JJ the same that you rush Cade. Cade's not going to avoid you and rip off a big game. Versus JJ, if you miss him, he's gone. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I think that's part of it. Another part of it, it's hey man, I mean, Cade's coming in, it's a blowout. They're probably they probably relaxed a little bit. And it's probably extremely frustrating for Cade and you kind of feel bad for him. And I don't think they have a vendetta against Cade McNamara necessarily, but unfortunately, it's kind of worked out that way. And the bigger part and the more frustrating part is he got hurt, right? What you can do though as a coach is you can point at that and say, guys, we can't do this. Like that can't be happening, and it can't be because of lackadaisical play. But yeah, I mean, if Trente is struggling in pass protection, I mean, yeah, it'd be great to be able to throw Carson Barnhart out there, and because I think he is probably more polished. I think Trente's just got way more upside.
Mm-hmm.
So
El Hadi's been pretty good though when he has come in.
El Hadi has been good. He's been their best reserve lineman for sure.
Yeah, and I'm high on Greg Crippen too. So there's just other spots, but like I said, I love this offensive line position. I think we're okay.
I like this team. Again, we don't know. We don't know for sure. I think
it's hard when you start off the schedule. It's just hard to know.
I think we're gonna get some answers this week. I mean, I'm expecting a very comfortable win.
Yeah, I still expect to see maybe even Davis Warren and Alan Bowman fight for second if they are up 40. If they do in fact win 42-20, part of me thinks, JJ's out by the fourth quarter, right?
Yeah. Yeah, if Jay is out by the fourth quarter, that's either an extremely bad thing or that's we're rolling again. So
yeah.
And then I guess the other question is, hey, this defense is probably still going to be the best that JJ's seen. So does he still play within himself? He's not going to keep completing 88% of his passes all year. You wouldn't think, but they've got a lot of weapons out there. You can't cover them all. So